Welcome to Leadership and Loyalty Tips. I'm your host, Dov Barron, and I've got a really great guest here with me that I want to share with you because I just saw this lady speak today at the C-Suite Network event here in Dallas, and what she was saying was so aligned with what we've been talking about on these podcasts for a while now. I want to, first of all, let me introduce you to Judith Glaser, and she is the did I say that right?
Yes,
Glaser?
you did.
Okay, and she is the author of Conversational Intelligence. That's that book right there. And really about the neuroscience of trust, the neuroscience of conversation, the neuroscience of really connecting. And you've heard me talk so much about how important it is to really connect with people and how we can no longer get away with being these elevated, standing on our soapbox leaders, and that we now have to get really relational with people. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Doug.
Awesome. So first of all, tell us how the book came about.
Where did this start in my life?
Yeah.
It started when I was actually below 15 years old. I found out that my dad was a stutterer. Now, it's something he kept as a secret from us, which is part of what the whole concept of transparency brings up. And when I found out that he had a teacher who, in high school, he was stuttering most of his life.
Right.
And she put him in a play. And when he was the lead in that play, he was not stuttering anymore. It was astounding to him.
So he trusted her enough, but she believed in him enough.
Exactly.
So that relationship.
And so imagine that you've never had that in your life, and all of a sudden someone brings it to you, right? So
what a gift.
It was just an incredible gift. He went on to become the valedictorian of his class in college, the head of the debating team. Imagine someone who was stuttering.
Right.
And then he went to the government and said, I want to bring dentistry around the world, and they made him an ambassador. And he went around the world and spoke and got over 180 awards and learned 7 languages on his own. I mean, it's like antithetical. Now, he was much of a telling driver as a result of that, which I think is fascinating because he was so clear that now this is what he wanted to do.
Right.
He wasn't as good at asking as he was as telling. He wasn't good at connecting, which is, again, another reason why I studied it, because I said, that there's something that I need to learn as a student of conversational intelligence to teach others, that there's an amazing dynamic that takes place when human beings connect. And if we feel, as we interact with somebody, that sense of, this person cares for me, there's a whole network inside of us that starts to operate differently, right?
Well, you talk about in the book, and you talked about on stage, and it's certainly a subject that I've studied and researched for years, which is the neurobiology of it all. So the release of cortisol under stress, the release of, excuse me, just came out of my mouth.
Oxytocin.
Thank you. Oxytocin to bond us.
Yep.
And that connection, and then the mirror neurons and all those things. Again, that's in my book too. So I just love what you're saying, and the importance of these conversations, because for leaders and C-suite individuals, we tend to think of this stuff as soft skills. Mm-hmm. And I always say the best way to get hard results is through soft skills.
Yep.
But now there's a lot of science around this, and even at the heart resonance level from the Heart Math Institute, and showing how that we fall in line with each other. Yep. Tell us a couple of tips in how to build a greater level of connection with somebody, like right away. I'm the C-suite executive. I've got to bring this person in. I've not had a conversation with them before. I've got to have a conversation with them, and I'm trying to get them to trust me and go with what we're doing.
So I have a wonderful example. Gary Rogers, who was from E's and Dreyer's Create Ice Cream. I just loved watching him operate with people. What he would do is he'd come into his organization where their meeting was taking place. And instead of standing up and being the guy with the tie and somebody who was, you have to honor and look up to, he made an intentional choice. And that was he would undo his tie. He'd sometimes take his jacket off, throw it away, so it wasn't apparent that he was coming here to judge people in any way. And people got that message that he really cared about them. He'd sit down at a table, he'd lean in, and he'd start to listen. And he did listening before he did telling. And that was his pattern. Right. And everybody knew, because he did it honestly and authentically, he wasn't doing it to play a game or say, these are the 5 tips of things that I have to do. But he would use that as a leverage to have people open up. And he sensed when they were comfortable with him, and sensed when they put things on the table, and he would literally say, I need to know what's going on in your mind. I need to know what we can do better in our company. No judgment here. Let's just talk about it. So he set the stage. And every time he did that, he was repatterning their brain. Right. As you can imagine, right? Of course. And he also was very mindful that a lot of leaders say, well, I just flipped once. I just got pissed at you once. Right. The one piss off, if you will. Pissosity. Yes. That's my word for it. I love it. The Greek god, Pistophius. Oh, my goodness. And he puts on his pissosity. I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, one of those lasts forever. It's like the dog that puts his pee on a tree and it's the strongest pee, and then all the other dogs feel like they have to compete with it. It just doesn't work to say, I only did it once and it'll disappear. Because every time you do that, that's a 26-hour shelf life of cortisol, and even that becomes extended when I feel so bad and I try to meditate beyond it, can't get beyond it. I start to think about the next contact with my boss and how horrible it's going to be. And so now I've got dramas in my head.
Sure.
And then I have to go to a friend and talk about it. And then the friend makes me feel better. So now I go, oh, good, if I talk bad about that person again to that person, I'll feel more better. And then it becomes, the drama of your life. It never goes away. It really doesn't. So I think leaders have to understand, while it sounds like a one bad count against them, it's not. It could be valued as 100.
But at the same time, from the C-suite position, the person is the C-suite executive. They did get pissed once at that person. Maybe they did it more than once, but they're genuinely remorseful. They genuinely like to change how they are. What can they do to rebond with that person? Because we talk a lot about loyalty, but I always say that loyalty is about bonding, and we all human beings want to bond. And I think because of that, it makes us very forgiving because we so desperately want to bond. What's your input on how to get that person to bond with you? If you broke their trust by getting pissed off, sending off their cortisol, all those things, now is saying, okay, I really want to do better with you. How do I do better?
It's really fascinating. One conversation can actually transform the whole thing. And when a leader goes back to someone and actually says, if they actually have done this, you know what, I couldn't go to sleep last night. I was remembering that conversation and kept coming back and back to me. And I realized I just flipped. I mean, it was like a moment where I had lost control because I had so much on my mind and it was like the wrong time to do it. And boy, did I feel bad. And I need to come back and just say, first of all, that I am sorry. And that it meant a lot to me to make sure that you and I were on a good page again. And I want you to come and understand.
See, for me, what you're saying there is so vitally important because I talk about the power of vulnerability, that it's so freaking powerful, and yet you and I, we're trained that vulnerability is weakness, but as you just demonstrated, that is so powerful because at that point, I've gone from being on guard to going, oh really? Oh, you're human. And that's the thing is, if you look at history, and you look at psychology in history, and we see that when you look at the dictators and you look at these people, let's take the obvious one is of course Adolf Hitler, and then you take the Nazis who were following him, and many of those soldiers were not bad people, but they did horrible things. And how did they do those horrible things? Because the propaganda dehumanized the enemy. And when somebody shits on us in the way that you just talked about, there's a tendency to dehumanize them. We can't, and then when they come back with this, as you said, that wonderful vulnerability. Now I can't stay that way because now you've made yourself human in my eyes again.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Right. I totally agree with that. I'm working on a big project right now in a school. I don't usually do this, but I got pulled in because of my grandchildren, and I'm the consultant that's pulling it together and helping them go from I to we. And I made a promise to some of the people in the room, and I wasn't able to deliver it. And I thought, oh my God, that's like the worst thing in the world. That's what I teach people not to do, and I went ahead and did it. They brought me back to have a meeting with this group again, and one woman spoke up. I was so thrilled that she spoke up and she said, you promised to say something when I left and you didn't do it. And what I did is describe my moment of indecision, the moment that I was in, and I remembered every detail about what I said, and because you do, because you know when
because it runs 1,000 times.
It runs 1,000 times.
If you've got any integrity, it does. If you don't have any integrity, you probably don't think about
gone,
it.
Right, it's just gone, trash. But, and I did, and she looked at me, and the whole room got silent, and she said, oh my goodness, you really do care so much, and it wasn't your fault, it's the situation, it was stacked against you. How much came back to me? I almost get tears thinking about it. That if we can get that vulnerable, as you're talking about with people, take them back to the moment where it was hard, because we now know that uncertainty is a combination of both trust and distrust living in us at the same time. You can't plan for it to be 100% one or the other, right?
No.
So most of the time we have this uncertainty about which way to go, and we call our shots. We play the dice and we do it, and then afterwards we have to say, wow, I took a risk, did I make the right decision? The good thing is if we can feel comfortable enough, like you're talking about, though, to go back in and say, this is where it was for me. I wish I had the power of the moment to make the right choice. Sometimes you get on the wrong horse.
Sure.
And I got fearful just like you do. Boy, I mean, after that, all of a sudden the whole room embraced staying in the game and working on this project, which was great.
Give us your top tip for building loyalty, because we know that the number one issue for C-suite individuals is keeping top talent. You can't keep the top talent they're jumping boat at every possible time, jumping the ship at every possible time. What's your number one tip to give to our viewers?
This is what I think it is that, and loyalty means staying with the company, is that correct?
Staying with the company and loyal to even to the project, to
Yep.
what we're working on, and loyal to the company certainly, because the tenure for millennials who are up and coming
Right.
is so short now compared to, our generation.
Right.
But of course, you're in a younger generation, because they just don't stick around.
They don't stick around, and their time frame is much shorter.
Absolutely.
They can change 7 times where it used to be one job.
Yep.
I think what people love who are millennials is they need to have people tell them where they really stand. There's something about that. They are competitive. They want to make the right moves for themselves. And if you can be honest and tell people where they stand, then they're going to be able to recommit and stay with the organization. Number one. Can I give 2 tips?
Sure, please.
Yeah, and the second tip is they really need to push this talent because they love to learn, they love to grow, they don't like to feel into a place of being mediocre, they want to be challenged. And so you as a leader have to stand up and find what's their next challenge that they need to be the best they can be.
Fantastic. Fabulous. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. This is Judith Glaser, author of Conversational Intelligence. Go out, get the book. Honestly, the stuff she shared with us from the stage was amazing. Really great around the neuroscience and the biology and the power of having these kinds of conversations that take a completely different depth and build fierce loyalty. This is Dov Barron. I'm the host here at Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. You can find out more about me at www.fullmontyleadership.com, and I'll make sure that we post Judith's link to her website where you can get all of her books and find out more about her and maybe get her to come and speak at your organization. Thanks for joining us.